Happy Wednesday. Good morning, good afternoon, good night from wherever you are in the world. I'm sending a big cheers from my teacup to yours. Thank you so much for joining me here today because, boy, is this going to be a fun one. If you haven't already, if you're new here, welcome. And please let us know in the chat where you're dialing in from, and maybe if you're brave enough, what is in your cup today so that we can get to know you a little bit better. Again, if you're new here, we meet here every single week. We're a really fun bunch and we learn from experts, CEOs, founders, really smart, talented, interesting people, and we steal all of their secrets and we copy their homework and we take it into our own lives, using it for ourselves. And today is no different because we are building off of last week's session, which was all about LinkedIn, how to leverage it, how to go into creator mode if you're brave enough to do that. And now we're kind of digging into the meat, which is, okay, it's great that you're kind of leveraging LinkedIn, but how are you coming across from a visual standpoint? Because as we all know, first impressions matter. You can never have a first impression twice. So I am really excited today that Abby Moffitt found time to join us. If you have not already cyber stalked her, I will fill you in a little bit, but she's still worth a cyber stalk. Abby has worked with amazing creative talents, and she and I go back a very long time. I think she is my longest work wife or work relationship I think I've ever had, because we met back in 2008 working at Condé Nast. Abby has had a storied career and has helped me countless times, not only in business, but also in life. So please help me in welcoming Abby.
Hi, everybody.
How's it going?
So happy to see you.
It has been a whole hour since I think you and I have talked, which is far too long.
But this time people are listening in. It's very different.
I'm super excited because I feel like based off last week's session, there was a lot of messages I had, DMs I had that people were asking questions about visual branding, whether that was for themselves, whether that was for their business. And honestly, like, you are the answer to that question. So thank you for making time for us.
I'm so excited to chat with your community today. I'm usually on the other side answering the crazy questions.
I love it. So for anybody that didn't have time to cyber stalk you before this, which we all love a good cyber stalk, so hopefully they did, but if they didn't, what is like the 30-second, 10,000-foot view of who the heck is Abby and where did she come from?
I am Abby. I am Kim's biggest fan. I have worked with everybody from rock stars to nonprofits, literally and figuratively. I started my design career about 15 years ago, and I have worked for magazines and artists and individuals and brands, and I keep learning and keep growing. And so this is kind of right up my alley today.
And I feel like a topic that you and I geek out over a lot is really aesthetics and why they matter so much and why, people can't really just hodgepodge them out. And I'm curious, like, did you always have that from a young age that you were like rearranging the bookshelves or just like making things look a little better?
Well, I actually think my sister is better at that. So, but I've always had an obsession with color. I've always had an obsession with symmetry and balance. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from. But I love for things to look pretty. I love for things to be easily accessible. So it all kind of fit together. Since I ended up not being a doctor, here we are.
Well, we're very happy you didn't become a doctor, but I also think what's really interesting kind of about your career path is you've done a lot of things. You've designed for print, you've designed for outdoor, real estate, wines. Like, it's sort of, do you think have you met a lot of people who are able to do that? Or for all of us who are not super well versed in the design world, do people mostly stick to their zones?
I think most people have a style that they stick to, that they sell as their big thing, what they're really good at. Based on my past, where we've been and who we've worked with, I really have started calling myself a design chameleon. I change colors, my style changes. I think what's really important is to maintain a brand for my clients. So my brand is kind of the background. I'm just going to build yours, and whether it's Green Day or Kim Kaup or any Oprah, I mean, it's a very different aesthetic. So I think that by not having a specific style, there's a lot more doors that are open.
Well, and I feel like when people ask me, what's your secret sauce? The answer that I always tell them is cohesive. Because if you are designing for Green Day, which might be a little more of a punk rock style, or you might be designing for Oprah, or you might be designing for my personal brand, or you might be designing for a wine, you're really thinking about the overall cohesiveness of that brand, regardless of maybe the nitty gritty, like the styles or the colors or the details.
I think it's consistency first, and then how's it being used? Is it being used online? Is it being used on the wall of a stadium? Is it being used on a t-shirt? Does it need to work for all of them? I think that is really important, and print is not dying. Things are going to continue to be printed. So I think designing with that in mind, the end result is really important.
And what do you think the difference is? I mean, obviously, over your career, you've worked with a ton of different people, both individuals, brands, bands, all of it. What do you think the difference is between somebody like an Oprah and maybe somebody who is, like me, who might have a personal brand or might have a business? Like, what do you think are the big differentiators? Because people might say, well, somebody's so much more successful, but when it comes to branding, you can have an A-list brand and not be an A-list star.
I think there is no difference in terms of the actual work, the actual brand. The difference is the scale, whether it's being used on best-selling books and tours and all across the world and needs to be translated into every language, or if it's a personal brand that is targeting your town or your city or your state. That's really the only difference, I think, is scale. A personal brand is just as important. Whether that's for your own small business that you're just starting or yourself, it's just as important.
It's huge. And I think this is such a good question from Brendan about like your inspiration, because it's something that we have talked about a lot, that part of that design chameleon thing is you not only have to take your inspiration, but at the end of the day, you work for the clients. So you kind of have to sometimes forego your own inspiration.
Usually. I think that you have experienced this as well with me, where we are super inspired by something and have an idea that we think is amazing, and we have to backtrack and we have to leave it and we put it in our design graveyard, which makes us really sad. But if the client's not happy, then it doesn't matter. So I think that finding inspiration in anything is really important, but you can't have a tight grip on it. You can't be in love with it because the client might not love it, and you're going to have to let it go. So I think, unfortunately, our design graveyard over the years has been packed pretty full.
Well, and I think it kind of goes into this other question, which I think is so important, especially as we think about brands. I think sometimes people have this set it and forget it model that the Nike check will always be the Nike check and it can never switch, it can never change. But when you're working with artists, whether it's Taylor Swift or Madonna, how do you think that they maintain their brands through all of these different evolutions? And obviously, working with Paul McCartney over the years, you've seen his evolution as well.
I think that it's a great question. I think consistency is important still, whether it's Taylor Swift or Nike. There's going to be some kind of through line that you follow. There's going to be something that lets you know it's that person, that brand, whether it's a color. We would all know if it was just the tip of the Nike swoop. So I think where it gets really creative with a brand that's been around for a really long time is, how do you keep building it? How do you keep changing it with the times? How do you help it evolve into environmental spaces and emails and all of these things. It's not going to be just putting the swoop at the top of the email or having Taylor Swift's signature, which she includes on a ton of stuff. But she also has a style that everybody recognizes. And I think her team is brilliant at doing that, where they can take a few elements and build it out into a million different things.
Well, and I also think that, like, again, using myself as an example, I feel like that's something that I have not only learned from you, but learned from a lot of our clients, where I'm thinking about, okay, well, what does my LinkedIn banner look like? And how does that relate to my Twitter banner? Which, how does that relate to my Instagram feed? Which, how does that relate to not only myself as a personal brand, but the business, whether the business is Zine Pack, Superfan, or now Bright Ideas Only? Like, there's kind of a whole universe that people have individually that I think they don't always think about. They sometimes think of them as separate worlds, but they're all part of the same universe.
Well, everyone's visual, whether people understand your business or not, whether people understand what your goals or your mission is, they understand visuals. And I think that is so important for people to get used to. So with your visuals, recently you've changed colors, and now when you go on your Instagram, it's, very warm and welcoming, and it feels like you. And I think that's something that people do on a grander scale. So there's color psychology, there's all these steps to it. But bringing in elements like that, again, back to consistency. Even if you're just using a Word document, you're typing your name, but you always use the same font, it's consistent. And I think that is something that is really easy to do as a stepping stone.
Very easy, but also I think, at least for me, I'll speak to like this for anybody that doesn't know, who might not join us every week. I just went through an amazing design transformation thanks to Abby. So if you head over to kimkalp.com or you check out my Instagram, that has all been redesigned and rebranded in a very Taylor Swift new era type of way, which is exciting. But I also think that it takes, even for me, who has, you can say, worked in a creative space or worked as a creative entrepreneur for the last 10 plus years, it is very hard to do that for yourself. You almost need a third person, because doing it for yourself, I think, is almost impossible. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, it's terrible. It's horrible. It is so challenging because it's hard to be introspective, and you want to know how people see you. But also in a creative agency, in a creative world, you're working with all different types of people and all different backgrounds. So you want to be able to be welcoming and open to them. I know a lot of people these days say, target your market, have a very clear target, make it as small as possible. I think you and I are both opposite of that. We don't have a narrow target. We have a very wide target and the ability to communicate visually with all of them. So I think for some people, for people that are focusing on just therapy practices for their client or just government, facilities, that is a little bit easier than when you're, not trying to be everything to everyone, but kinda, which is really what everyone says not to do. But we're doing it.
Well, we're doing it. And I also feel like we're trying to do it across different mediums, which can also be tricky when you're talking about social media, when you're talking about in a branding standpoint. And I think, Jeff's question here is something that again, all of our clients, and I think we're allowed to say this, we've signed enough NDAs, but like, we've seen clients that are on the very organized part of this spectrum, like very clear guidelines, fonts, do's and don'ts. And then we've also been surprised by some pretty big celebrities, some pretty big brands that actually don't have all of this in order. Like they don't have brand guidelines. And you're kind of like, really? You're kind of a big deal.
Happens more often than people would think. Hey, Jeff, that's a great question. It just depends. I don't think there's ever a steadfast solution for that. I think that you have to be really flexible, flexible with your methods, not flexible with the end result. So you know your end result is going to be X, Y, and Z, has to work certain ways, but how do you get there? It really depends on a million factors. It depends on how many cooks are in the kitchen, how many assets they provide, how it's going to be used, what the constraints are. You know, where's it shipping from? Is it going to melt? Like, there's a million things to think about that vary for everything. So I would say for me personally, I just focus on the end result, and I don't have a set of controls in place. I get there however I get there.
And what would you say to somebody who might be watching who thinks to themselves, well, I work at Bank of America, I'm a manager there. This doesn't apply to me. I'm not in the creative field.
Everyone is creative. Everyone is creative. Everyone has creativity. I think that when it comes to talking about a personal brand, you do have a personal brand. I mean, it's how you walk down the street. It's the pictures you post on Instagram. It's how you talk to people. It's the language that you use. So whether you choose to make that a visual representation or not is totally a personal preference. I think this day and age, especially with people working remotely more, the whole Zoom culture, LinkedIn, I think people associate imagery with you. So I think it does apply to everyone. I think that you really need to have a visual representation of yourself. It doesn't have to be $1 million brand like Target or whoever. You don't need commercials running, but I do think you need to represent yourself in a way that is what's inside, make it the same so that people know what they're getting.
And I would say that's down to like your email signature. That's, I always like pointing, let's see if I can point this like little yellow swipe. Like it really, there are little things, maybe it's your Zoom call, like what your background is, you can make those digital backgrounds now so that those can be customized. I think that there's more places than people think that their brand or sort of their best first impression gets made. And I posted that little fun fact yesterday on LinkedIn that we process images 60,000 times faster than we do words or text, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. Like, we are very visual creatures. What's something, I have like a twofold question. So one, what is something that you see kind of mistakes, or maybe not mistakes, maybe things that you kind of get under your skin? You're like, oh, I wish somebody would like change these 3 things. And then on the other side of the spectrum, what are some things that you see, whether it's in the personal brands you work with, or whether it's the small businesses that you work with, that you think like, yeah, those people are like doing it right?
Good question. I think we'll start with the things people are doing right. I think having a website, even if it's super simple, having a landing place so that when people Google, they find you, they find something, they know you're legit. I work with a lot of small businesses and we'll get that page up first. It may be 6 months before they're ready to move forward with the website, but at least they're there. Google finds them, people find them, they have an email link. It's the easiest thing to do. I think what people don't do well is they don't just stick with it, make a decision and go with it. So there was a question in the chat yesterday, I think, about like for startups and when you're testing beta programs and stuff. I think personally that coming up with your brand upfront before all of this is super important. And that's something you stick with. Your tagline may change. You may tweak your colors a little bit here and there, but the general name, brand, the look is going to stick. Because that's the way people are going to really get to know it, is once they start seeing it over and over and over again. Another thing I think from a personal branding standpoint, people aren't using the language that they actually talk in. So it drives me batty to see websites where people, are very formal and very professional, but then when you work with them, that's not how they talk, which is totally fine. It's not consistent. You don't know what you're getting. So I think having the verbal cues match the visual cues, match the real life cues is really important.
Well, really important. And I also feel like something that, again, having someone to help you think about all these things, like I know you do it for me. What was it like 2 days ago in Slack? You're like, we really need to change your, I think it was like LinkedIn header. I don't know what you were calling out. And I was like, oh, you're right. Like we do need to change that. And so I think it's important to say that because I think that even I've been doing this for 10 years and I still need help. And so I'm sure it's a testament to you when you're working with people that are still really knowledgeable about the subject. Like there's still things that you're adding and helping them with.
Yeah, I mean, I really like to add value to a business by doing that. I think that's where part of the design chameleon comes in, because I'm not going to try to change who you are or what your business is, but I want to put it in the best light out there. I want people to be able to see it and get it and feel the right things and think the right things. So it's really just translating. It's a translating service I'm working on over here.
100%. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts, good or bad, on like sort of the Canvas of the world, the Fivers, the 99 designs? Because I know that that's something that you and I sometimes gripe about.
You see my hives breaking out? You see the hives? I'm a big fan of Canva. I think you're a great example of someone that uses it really well. You have your brand colors in there, you have your fonts in there, you're being consistent, you're not like going totally rogue with it. I think it's a really great option for people to create visually pleasing things on the fly. Fiverr and 99 Designs and all of those, I think they're great for what they are. I think that they give people options, like really quick, affordable options. But I think if you are building a personal brand or you are building a small business that is about you or your product or your passion, there's no way that they are going to get to that end result that is right for you. I think, starting with the logo from there, not a horrible idea. Could be fine. But when it comes to building out a brand, I think there needs to be human interaction. There needs to be conversation. There needs to be an understanding of where you're going or where you want to go. And that's really hard to get to with those systems in place.
And what I always say for people about Canva, which as you know, I'm a super fan of, and I would like talk to the end of the moon about how great Canva is and how less I bother you because I can like make little changes by myself. What I will say that I think Canva is it's great when you already have a running start. What do I mean by that? I mean that for me, Abby created my designs. Abby created all of the fonts that I use. Abby created the colors. Abby created the structure. You can actually, hot tip, maybe I'll do a whole nother workshop on Canva. You can actually upload all of that into Canva. So the stuff that Abby structured for me, that all got uploaded into Canva. And then all I have to do, I know that I'm being consistent with the brand because it's kind of like Abby put the training wheels on my bike. And now I can go in Canva and ride the bike because I have the training wheels. I sort of already have the pieces of the puzzle in there. You already uploaded my logo in there. You already, everything's already in there and I might pull and tweak from it, but I know that I'm not coloring outside the lines, if you will, because you kind of already put the lines in there for me. And I think that Canva can be great, but if you don't have the lines and you sort of don't have the guidelines, that's when it starts to get like real crazy real quick.
Well, and if you don't, then, and you don't want to spend the money or, you set the guidelines yourself. Decide what colors you're going to use, decide what it's going to look like, and just, again, be consistent. That's the theme of today, apparently. I think that's the way to fake a brand from the beginning. I mean, that's really what building a brand is. So if you don't have someone to add the training wheels for you, build them yourself. Just start being consistent with what you do and keep doing it. I don't love my website. I finally got it up. It's going to be there for a while because
I love it.
That's the last thing I want to do right now. So I think just consistency is really important. And regardless of whether that's Canva or Fiverr or whatever. If you go to one of those companies, tell them you're using these 3 colors and that's what it has to be. Give them some guidelines. I think the results will be a little better.
And I'm curious, not only have you worked on my personal brand, but you've worked on many other personal brands. What are some of the common shortfalls or the common things that maybe people forget or they don't really take into account that they should be?
I think that people don't realize how many assets you really need to be consistent throughout a long period of time. Whether that is fonts for different occasions, sizes, uses, patterns, icons, whatever that may be, you really need to develop a system that you can build on, that can grow. And a lot of times I see people with small businesses and personal brands that just want to stop short. They want to do the bare minimum. And that's totally fine, but it's going to be really hard for that brand to grow visually from that moment on.
Well, and I think something that you also have a special skill in addition to being a design chameleon, is you really meet people where they're at. And what I mean by that is I've seen you work with clients where you have some clients who, let's call them superstar clients, okay, Abby, I can meet with you on the phone 3 times a week and I can look at this. And yes, I'm going to update my Instagram 3 times a week. And I'm going to use all these graphic, really. And then you've also worked with clients that I've seen. I'm thinking of one kind of A-list band in particular, who's wake me up when it's done. I don't want to be involved. I don't want to look at anything. And I think what's really rare is you meet people where they're at, depending on how much energy and time and effort they want to also put into their brand.
Yeah, that's so true. I've never thought of it that way, but there's a trust factor there, obviously. So I think you've got to be really cautious to get there, especially if they're saying, don't need to see it, wake me up next month. Then they're trusting you and you've got to really understand it. So there was a question before about inspiration. I think a lot of my inspiration comes from research. So whether I'm talking to a client 3 times a week or once a month, whether it's a band or a new wine brand that's coming out, I think having the research, I think you and I are both the kind of Jack or Jill of all trades because we know a little bit about a lot of things. And that's really important. You've got to understand your industry that you're working in. You've got to understand who their customers are, who they're talking to. Is this artist talking to a 14-year-old kid or a 40-year-old? We got to understand that. And I think that comes into play when creating this and meeting them where they're at and talking to them in a way that they want to talk to their customers.
Well, and I think it's also, how do they want to talk to their customers and how do they really want their customers to feel? I know that's something we always talk about, which is what is that feeling that you want people to walk away with? Do you want them to trust you? Do you want them to be excited? Do you want, what is the feeling that you want them to walk away from, which kind of goes into this question about really playing on emotions. And I think design is a lot of emotional playing as well.
Colors are so important. So important. I think that in live shows and in concerts, there's so much moving and so much sound that people are being attacked at all their senses. So color is not quite as vital in that situation, but if a band comes on and they're playing really loud and the screen is red, you're going to have a very different feeling than if they're playing quietly and the screen is blue. So I think you'll notice a lot of artists and bands having their colors, the intensity of the colors match the intensity of the moment. But when you're working in print, you don't have the volume. You don't necessarily have the scent, or you might. You don't have all of those other elements. So in that case, color is super important. And there's a whole list of psychological reasons for every color. But I think it also comes down to, especially if it's a personal brand, what colors make you feel good, because you're going to be surrounded by them all the time. A good example for us is Superfan. When we switched over at the beginning of the year, we had been working with those colors for a decade. And quite frankly, we were tired of them. They didn't make us happy. And so our new colors make us happy. They're sunshine, they're Florida, they're Texas, they're South Carolina, they're Go Gators, Go Heels. It's us. It's us. And that is important. And people may not know that, but we love doing stuff with our brand because we love the colors. So I guess it's twofold. It definitely affects the viewer, but I think it's really important for the brand itself to be comfortable and have a passion for those colors, because otherwise you're going to get real tired of them.
Well, and not only are you going to get real tired of the colors, but like playing off of Brendan's joke here, where, you know, one serif, fonts are also a big deal, because you are also going to be seeing those fonts over and over and over again
Yes.
for a very long time. So it is not just the colors, it is also the fonts.
Definitely the fonts. And do they need to be used the size of a building, or do they need to be used tiny? You know, it matters, because they need to be legible. If you're going to write something, it's got to be worth reading, which means got to be legible.
And I love this question from Jeff, because it's something that you and I were just talking about when we were talking about actually your Instagram grid, which anybody who doesn't follow Abby on Instagram should go over there and check it out, because you have kind of built this beautiful mosaic picture when people land on your Instagram. How, you know, do you think that really paying a lot of attention to your social media posts and keeping a firm grip on those is important for people?
For me personally, it's not that important. I wanted my Instagram to look like my new website for a little while, but I also wanted it to look like me and what I do daily and my adventures. I think that for a larger brand, for what you've built, for A-list celebrities and artists, I think it is really important to have consistency. I don't think it needs to be as detailed as like black, white, you know, very structured, unless that fits the brand. But in terms of outsourcing social media, as long as whoever's helping you understands your brand, it should be fine. Again, it's based on your language, the words, the style of your verbal communication, your colors. As long as they understand all that and they're speaking the right language, then I would feel good about outsourcing social media.
Well, and that's why I think it all comes back to, you know, it's more than just colors and fonts. It's a mood, it's a feeling. And if you are going to outsource it, whoever you're outsourcing it to also has to understand that. Because,
Right.
you know, going back to our rebrand with Bright Ideas Only, we knew we wanted to be positive. We wanted to be happy. We wanted to be relatable. And, you know, if you just give somebody the hex colors and say, oh, it's, you know, it's orange, blue, and white, have fun, you can create something orange, blue, and white that's not that happy.
Right.
And that's not that relatable. So it is just more than like colors and fonts.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a whole personality. And I think a brand needs to be a living thing. Fun fact, as you know, in the entertainment world, a lot of brands are not living things. They are very restricted. There's not a lot of, if any, room for growth. I think that for personal brands and up and coming entrepreneurs who are building brands, they've got to have that wiggle room in them, because you don't know who you're going to be in 2 years or 3 years. You don't know how your business is going to grow or what it's going to look like. And so in order to be consistent and grow, you've got to have room in there. So you've got to think about it as a living, breathing thing from the beginning.
Well, exactly. And I think, you know, to Heidi's point, you really have to make sure that your personality is coming through.
Hi, Heidi. She's my little friend around the corner in Charleston. And Heidi is one of my inspirations. She's an amazing interior designer, and her color use is awesome. Check out her Instagram. Yes, your personality should shine through in your brand. Heidi is a very happy, sunshiny person, and that comes through when she works with all her clients. And I think that it definitely comes through in my brand, Carolina Blue is everywhere, in every one of my brands. All of my companies, Carolina Blue is there. but yeah, I think it's super important, especially for a personal brand. You're building it based on you. It should reflect your personality, your love, your passion, all those things.
And I would build on that and say, I also think it comes true when your personality is a big part of your brand. So, like to use an example, if you are a real estate agent, yes, people are buying the houses, but they're buying them from you, and they could choose any real estate agent, or if you are a coach, you are a business coach or whatever, there are lots of business coaches, but people are going to you. So I think personality also plays a big part when so much of what you do is attached to your work.
Yep. Well, you're right. They're working with you. I think that's something that we come across in our small businesses as well as with Bright Ideas Only. People are coming to us not only because of our physical capabilities, but because they enjoy working with us. We're going to answer the phone. We're going to solve the problem. We're going to do it in an upbeat manner. That's part of our brand. That's who we are, and they know to expect that. So I think that, that's another facet of personality shining through not only a personal brand, but regardless of what kind of business you are.
Well, and I think Eric, who's a photographer, also makes a great point that we didn't touch on, which is photos matter. Good headshots. What are you picking for your website? And I know that that's something that you also have helped with, even just with me, like Kim, get a shot of you, holding a coffee mug. Kim, it's also visuals in terms of photos as well.
Not only professional photos, but again, back to Heidi's question, photos that show your personality. Don't have a black and white, super professional, like financial looking headshot if you're working for a kayak business. It doesn't make sense. So I think that that's something that, lifestyle photography is a huge thing these days. There's photographers that do headshots that are so much more fun than sitting in a studio, and letting your personality come through that with the filter of professionalism, obviously, can be a really fun way to build your brand and add a layer of personality to it.
I so agree. I feel like sometimes when I'm kind of talking to people, one of the biggest, I'll say, like arguments that I hear is like, well, I work at, Wells Fargo, so I can't be fun. I have to stay and, I'm very corporate, or I'm scared that they won't let me do that. For the people that you work with, how do you help them get around that? Or how do you help them think about that in a new way?
Well, most people I work with, if they're building a sub brand, if they're either building a personal brand or they've got a side gig they're working on, my question is always, well, is that the personality of your new brand? Because that's what matters. Obviously, you've got to have that corporate demeanor when you're in the corporate workspace, but you can still have personality. But unless you're building a brand that is that same vibe, there's no reason for it to be like that. You're obviously wanting to represent yourself in the best way possible and put yourself out there. So it's not going to be an embarrassment. I think what it comes down to is being careful, where you reference what business and any of those kind of crossovers. But in terms of building the brand, it doesn't have to be the same. It can be you. It can be warm and fun and different while you're working a corporate job.
Well, and I feel like I saw this and I have to touch on it, which is you can do things that are not stereotypical if, to Abby's point, you're staying true to who you are. So just because Abby likes one certain sports team and might use their colors or reference them when it comes to her brand, it doesn't mean that she's like 99% of the other fans, because her personality is not like 99% of the other fans. So you can use things and use elements without fear of, well, if I do that, I'm just going to be like every other business coach. Or if I do this for my, coffee cup design, I'm just going to be like every other promo company that does a coffee cup design. Because again, it's the personality that comes with it. I had to touch on that.
Definitely. I think that, being a Carolina fan as an example, like there are a lot of North Carolina fans out there. I am one of many, many, many. But I think that if you take my branding and my colors, it doesn't match up to the university. It doesn't look like any of the stores or restaurants on Franklin Street that use Carolina blue. I think that you create a unique image by injecting your personality into it. And back to the verbal cues, the elements that are used. I use seersucker everywhere. I'm from the South. I love seersucker. My dog had a seersucker collar. Like it's part of my life. It's everywhere. My bedrooms have been navy blue forever and ever and ever. Like it's just colors that to me are comforting. And I think that there's a ton of other businesses that use navy blue and light blue. But it doesn't look like mine because it's not me. It doesn't have my personality. And I think that it's the same thing for you and your website. There are a lot of businesses out there using a rust color and a gold warm sunshine color, but they're not you and they don't have your personality and they don't have that vibe to them. And because we're able to inject your vibe into your brand, they're different.
Well, and Jeff just took my next question. He's on like the same wavelength as me. Mine was a little different, but one, we can ask his, which is key questions that you ask clients. And then I would add a second question, which is who are the types of clients that you're really excited to work with or have you been really excited to work with lately?
Key questions to ask. I always start by asking open-ended questions, not very pointed, just let them talk. Let them talk and just be a good listener. That is something that I actually learned from you a long time ago. You would always say, let's just listen and something will come out we can use. So I do a lot of listening and then I pull certain things that they said, certain words that they repeated, certain references they made, things that I know about them personally. So I start there and then I create a visual representation of that. I create a mood board. And then they react because everyone reacts to visuals. So they'll love some images, they'll hate some images, they'll X them out, and we go from there. Usually, I would say about 70% of my mood board is dead on just from listening. And then after that, we make adjustments. So my questions I ask are, if it's a brand new company, why? Why are you doing this? What are your goals? Who are you wanting to target? What companies do you love? What companies do you hate and why? Questions that are a little bit bigger answers that usually after one or two questions, I stop asking them because it just becomes a conversation. It just rolls into the next thing and I just take keywords out of it. Your question, who have I loved working with, I think is what you asked.
Who is because I know that you've been expanding in terms of who you're working with. Like I was really excited when you did your first wine company and then you did a second spirits company. So what are the types of obviously you did my personal brand, but what are the types of people that you've been working with lately or that you're hoping to work with in the future?
It's such a hard question because I love, love, love the variety. My parents think it's hilarious because anytime they ask what I'm working on, it's the most varied list of things. I think from a Bright Ideas Only perspective, I'm super excited that the world is opening up and we're seeing touring again and we're seeing concerts. And I think working with these artists in a different way, because they're going to be interacting with fans in a different way, is going to be a really big challenge and exciting for both of us. From a branding standpoint, I love working with new up and coming businesses. Fresh slate, there's so much room to grow, so many things to build. I think that it happens in both of our businesses. With Bright Ideas, we create something, someone sees it, they want something similar. So a lot of my branding clients lately have been in the food and spirits and wine industry because I've worked with one, it's led to another. But I've worked with Heidi, which is really fun. I've worked with a restaurant here on Johns Island called Kiss Cafe, which is so happy and bright and lovely. And so things like that have been out of my wheelhouse a bit in terms of what the industry is. But I love the challenge of it. I'm working with a calligrapher right now in New York who started taking calligraphy classes as a hobby, fell in love with it, quit her job, is doing calligraphy full time now. So that is a lot of pressure. Obviously, she's putting a lot of eggs in this basket, but I think it's really fun. Her passion is so great. So yeah, I don't have an industry specific answer for that. I think I just really love working with people that are passionate about what they're doing and are willing to put in the time and energy to build it.
Well, that's the key part, time and energy, because it's not a set it and forget it. You got to put in the time as well.
Yeah.
I love this question from Brendan because it's a great one, because there are people who are joining us today who have a seat at our coffee table who maybe are not in the US. They're from other parts of the world. So how does branding, when you're thinking about it from a global standpoint, this is a brand that everybody's going to see, or this is a website that everybody's going to see. How do you think about that? Or to Brendan's point, are there websites that you check? To make sure that it's going to work well in other countries or in other places?
It's a really good question. And I think that, most companies that are targeting a global audience are spending a lot of money to checks and balance, make sure everything is good there. I think that if you have a global audience, intentionally, definitely having your website available in different languages. WordPress, Squarespace, all those services, I believe, now offer the ability to translate your site. So that is an easy key. In terms of not wanting to offend anyone with certain words or colors or icons, I think that for most personal brands, people are going to be okay. You're not using imagery that is, really intense. But yeah, if you're building a business, you definitely want to do a background check on what you're producing. Are there other logos that look like yours? Are there logos that look like yours that are insulting or, are going to come across poorly? If you're targeting a country that thinks a certain color is equivalent to something bad, those are all things to take into account. But unless you're targeting that audience solely or very prominently, I think you're probably going to be okay. But yeah, I think the easiest thing is just translating the website into various languages.
I totally agree with that. Okay, we've reached my favorite part where we basically just copy out your homework.
Okay.
That's why I love it. Yes. We just get to steal everything that you're working on and that you're doing. So let's take a sip of my caffeine before we dive on in. Okay. What is the best thing that you've started using lately or doing lately that you absolutely love? You're obsessed with it.
So this is really lame, but I really love being outside and planting flowers. So I have been trying to get better at that. And if Heidi's still on, she's probably laughing because her mom actually planted the flowers in my planters in the front, but I did my whole back. So I'm trying to learn about them. I'm trying to keep them alive. I'm really excited because I brought beautiful flowers in my house that I grew. So that has been my new thing, being outside in the dirt, planting things, trying to figure out something new. I knew Heidi was going to laugh. There she goes.
I mean, it goes back to also your visual hobby. Of course you're planting flowers.
And I have blue flowers in my backyard. Don't you worry.
Don't you worry. Exactly. But speaking of, giving to others, and obviously what you do on a day-to-day basis is very service oriented. What is something that you've done for yourself, maybe in the past year or maybe in the last couple months, that you're just really glad that you're yeah, I'm glad that I took time for myself to do this thing?
The boat club. It is my favorite thing, Freedom Boat Club. If you don't know it, look it up. If you want to join, I'll be your referral. It is the most amazing thing. So I live in Charleston, close to the water. The boat club allows you to take boats out all the time. You don't have to clean them. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to trailer them. All the pain and the butt stuff that comes with owning a boat. And I love it. And I've learned to drive it. And I go out on the water all the time and see the dolphins and sunset. And it just makes me whole. It gets me off my computer. It's a whole new wealth of inspiration. It's just my favorite thing. I love it so much.
Oh, I love that. Okay. What is the next thing that you're hoping to learn since you've already learned how to drive a boat? What's next on the learning list?
You probably learn to like water ski behind the boat, but that's not on the list. I think from a professional standpoint, the next thing I want to learn is more coding. I've learned a ton of coding in the last year to be able to customize websites without doing them from scratch. But I really love being able to learn more and more of that because I don't speak that language. I don't speak that language at all. So it's really challenging. So I think professionally, that's probably high on my list. As well as self-publishing a book is very high on my list. So two things to learn.
We're all waiting
for
the well-being books.
Waiting. So am I. Gotta get
books, on it. Books with an S. I don't even think we want to say books because you have more than one book in you. Books.
Yes. So self-publishing, that's on the list.
I love that. Okay, I feel like you're such an amazing visual person. You know so many other creative directors and artists and stuff. So what are some accounts or brands or humans that you follow on social media, whether it's Instagram or Pinterest or could be another platform that just sort of light you up or that you laugh at or just kind of like bring you joy to your social media feed?
I follow such a crazy wide variety of accounts: sports, entertainment, news, dogs. I follow a lot of dogs, a whole lot of dogs. I think that accounts, I don't follow a ton of designers because I don't necessarily want to be influenced by what they're doing. I really love, I think her name is Morgan Harper Nichols. She just has really beautiful, feel-good posts. They're kind of make me stop scrolling and think, which is good, a really good thing. I love following like Heidi's account with her beautiful pictures of her interiors and the colors. My friend Jenny Peck is a new artist. She's self-taught. She does watercolors and acrylics, and I love her use of color. So that I find a lot of inspiration in. I'm definitely a big follower of you. I think it's variety. I don't really follow a lot of people in my industry per se. I just find inspiration from everybody else's stuff.
Well, I think that's true for so many of us, is that you don't get inspiration from where you work day to day. It's when you get out and you experience new things and new people and new points of view that then that's when like the light bulb or that's when like the aha moments really just, they like kick in a bigger way.
Definitely.
Okay. We love homework.
Okay.
We meaning I can speak for myself. I love homework. What is like a homework assignment that you would give anyone who's watching to do this week? Maybe it can be try something new. Maybe it can be watch something or listen to something. But what should we all do this week?
Can I do two? Two homework assignments? Okay.
Totally.
Well, one is just get outside. Get outside, whether it's with people at a bar, in your grass, just get outside and reset. I think that fresh air and sunshine is an amazing cure for what ails you, whatever that is. So that's my easy homework. My not so easy homework is whether you have a personal brand or not, or if it's a business you're starting, start to think of yourself and your business as more than that. So I actually posted this on my Instagram today that I'm a designer, I'm a creative director, I'm a founder, I'm writing a book, but that's not who I am. And I think that we fall into the trap of, hi, Kim, it's nice to meet you. What do you do? Instead of, hi, Kim, it's nice to meet you. Like, what do you love to do? Or what makes you happy? Or what sets your passion ablaze? And I think that we forget to think about people and businesses in that frame of reference. So my homework is to work on not necessarily defining yourself, but work on talking about yourself in a way that is not based on your job, your career, your business, but in a way of like who you really are.
Oh, snaps. Claps from the back. Ah, so good. Oh, so good. Abby, where can people keep learning from you, watching you, and just exploring all the things that you're up to?
I'm on LinkedIn and I use Instagram more than anything, probably. Abby.c.moffitt is my Instagram. And I'm always on there.
Oh, I love it. And I will give a shameless plug because I love Abby's new website. So if you haven't already, check out Abby's website because I just chef's kiss. Like it's so good. So I would also put in a plug for that one too.
Well, thank you so much for having me join your awesome community today. It's so fun. It's crazy having an audience for our daily chat, but
I was about to say, I'm so excited because I get to like steal your goodness and your smarts and just learn from you every single day. And so I'm really excited for other people to be like, see, this is what I'm saying. Like, she's so talented. She's so brilliant. I'm so excited for other people to experience the shock, the amaze, the awe, the wonder that I get to experience every day working with you. So thank you for all of your amazing knowledge and making time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We make a good team. Thank you, guys.
We do make a good team, if I do say so myself. I'm sending a big cheers.
Cheers.
From me to you, and cheers to everybody else. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.